Okay, this is the overrun and forwards on this RE4F04B. You got a D style ring, you got a lip seal. Lip's gonna face up towards you. This is a recase, so I'm not gonna worry about putting this back together. When you put this piston down in there, you're gonna want the opening to line up with the groove here. Then on this piston you got a D style ring in the center again, and a lip seal on the outside. This little ball, you want to make sure it's free and that it's seating properly. You're going to line that up with the opening on the piston there again. And then on this return spring there's a triangle. That triangle has to line up with that little ball. And you got your snap ring that goes on top. I'm not worried about all this stuff because it's going to the junkyard, so we're just going to throw that away. On the early ones it's different. On the later ones you got two cushion plates, so you're going to want to line the tab up here. Then on your other cushion plate you're going to want to go opposite into this other empty hole right there. So you got two cushion plates sitting on top of each other. You got one with the dish facing down, the bottom one. And you got the top one with the dish facing up. Then you got a steel, single steel. Then your clutches, two steels. A clutch, two more steels, and a clutch. Then your pressure plate with the step facing up, and then your snap ring goes on top of that. Then for your forwards, not that it matters on that. You got your cushion plate, the dish is going to face down. Then you just alternate your steels and your clutches. And I thought I brought the bearing, but I guess I didn't. We'll worry about the bearing when we go assembling the unit. And normally these drums don't split apart like this one did up here. Usually it's the high clutch drum that does that. But this one for some reason split apart. Alright, then your snap ring goes in. And it really did a number on the center support. Alright, I'm probably going to have to break that off. Alright, I'll be back on the next drum. Alright, here's our bearing. It goes back here. You make sure that this ball's free also, and seal them properly. Okay, on our drum here, there's early and late. This is the late one. You got a D-ring that goes in the center. You got a lip seal, lip facing up towards you. You got this piston. This is our return spring. This is a real pain to put in, or at least it used to be. I figured out a pretty easy way to do it. This is our snap ring that goes down here. You can see how it's thinner than the one that's on top. Put your snap ring on there. Get you another piston that's just like this one. You're going to put it in between where these are. You're going to put them over here. Put it in just like so. Put this in your foot press and push it down, and that snap ring will pop in. You may have to do it a couple times. Usually it just pops right in there. So I'm not going to go through all that since I'm not building this thing. I'm going to go ahead and leave this out. You got a cushion plate, dish down, And you're going to do the same thing that you've done on the other one. You're going to go in the slot that's empty, and you're going to put another cushion plate with the dish up. Then you got a steel and your clutch, and a steel and a clutch, your pressure plate on top, and then your snap ring on top of that. These bushings are super bad. Do yourself a favor and always put one in. Alright, we'll be back on the next one. Alright, on our high clutch drum, we got rubber molded sealed pistons. You probably want to replace these. So this one goes in first. The spring cage sits on top. This piston, balance piston, sits on top of that. You want the short end of the taper of your snap ring up, and you either want the opening of the snap ring to be like that, or you want it to be like that. You don't want it hanging halfway like that. Alright, since I'm not building this, I'm not going to put these pistons in. On the clutches, you got single steel, it's thicker than the rest, goes on the bottom. Then you got a clutch. Then you got, this varies, so keep an eye on how it was. Main thing is your clearance comes out right. This one, on most of them, there's 3 steels, a clutch, 3 steels, a clutch, 3 steels again, get down in there, clutch, then your pressure plate with the step up, then your snap ring on top of that. I'm going to leave these clutches out. In fact, I think I'm just going to keep the whole stack. That way it makes it easier on me, and I got spares, as this drum is normally the one that goes. You're going to have a bearing that goes on the back here. You got your sealing rings on the front. They are butt cut. You're probably going to want to put some grease in there to keep it in place. They go together like so. Don't worry about putting those on. On the front of the drum here, there's this bearing, sits on top. I'm going to go ahead and put some grease on it. And go ahead and put your reverse drum on top of that. We're going to set this all in at one time. Set that off to the side. Alright, on your center support, this one is ruined because of that drum. It ripped most of these little tips off, and it eat into it right here. You have a D-ring that goes on the outside, D-ring that goes on the inside. When you put this back in, you're going to want to keep an eye on how this was in there. You got your feed hole's going to face at 6 o'clock. This little lineup tab is going to go over about the 1 o'clock position. The thing is that when you're putting this down in there, it has to line up on this spring cage. And sometimes you can get this in there with the spring cage on here. Most of the time it's easier to go ahead and put the spring cage down inside the tranny, and then as you're putting this piston down, kind of line it up to where it's going on to the tips, just like so. I'm gonna not put it in. It makes it easier on me. In fact, I'm not even gonna put this piston in there, but that's how it goes. We'll get to that in a minute. Alright, on our servo, this is the first one I've come across that has an O-ring down in here. Normally these have a gasket that go right here. So I'm not sure at what point I started putting that O-ring in there, but this one has one. You got a thick O-ring that goes here, a thin O-ring that goes here. We have this D-ring that goes on this one. This is going to go down inside of here. Then you have two thin O-rings, or actually I don't know where the other one is. You got an O-ring that goes here and an O-ring that goes here. You have a D-ring. These are different sizes for different models, so you're just going to have to pick the one that fits properly on there. You don't want it too loose, you don't want it too tight. You got a D-ring that goes here. This is going to go up inside of there. That's going to sit on there. You got a return spring that goes on here. Now I will say this, I would advise you to put the Transgo kit in the valve body and the servo of this thing, so that's going to change how this is done, but this is the factory setup. These 312s hold this to the case, and some of them, the filler tube has a 10mm that goes through there and bolts to the case. Let's see here. On the back here, we have this thrust washer, metal, 3-tab goes on there, your Sprag race. Then your Sprag is going to be inside of here. I usually leave it in there. And you're going to be turning clockwise, locking counterclockwise. On the back here is another race. And this piece has another 3-tab metal washer that goes on it. When it sits down inside the drum, this is going to lock into right there. You're going to have to, normally it's going to sit like that, and you're going to have to turn it to where you feel it click into place. We've got a bearing that goes down inside of here, and the bearing goes on the back side. These are super bad about stripping out. It's one of the main problems with this unit. This is going to sit on top of here. Then our sun gear is going to go in with this side facing up. We're going to have this bearing here on the back of this planet, and it's going to be sitting on there. Our Sprag's going to go on top. The bearing's going to be sitting here. This race is going to go on here. This bearing is going to go on top. The hub is going to sit on there. That bearing is going to ride on there. And this is going to go on the back of that support. It's going to go this way on the back of here. Then we have our pump. Our gear's going to go. The outer gear does not matter which direction it goes. The inner gear has a flat side and a recessed side. The recessed side is going to face to the front. Got your bushing, your front seal, and an O-ring here. The pump's going to go together. It only goes one way. These 5mm Allens hold all that together. Our sealing rings are butt cut again. They're going to go together just like so. This thrust washer goes on the back. This race goes right there. And we have a gasket that's going to go on here. I just take some grease, put it in several spots so it holds it into place, and drop it in. Okay, let me get to the case part of it, and then we'll be back. Okay, there's no need to take the transfer gear out of here. Just make sure it's rolling around nice and free. I've never seen the bearings bad in one of these. You got your pivot pin for your park actuator here. You have your spring. You want this end to go in that hole. This end right here is going to wrap around here. When you put this down inside there, you're going to have to maneuver this in such a way, because what it's going to want to do is grab the last part of that spring, and you're going to pinch it between the case and the actuator when you bolt it down, and then your park's not going to work. So you're going to have to make damn sure that this is all the way past that spring. It's very easy to pinch that in there. Okay, I believe it's all the way down. There's no need to take this support out of the back of the case. You can take it out to put the sealing rings on if you want. I leave it in there. It does have to be bolted in a certain way, so make sure that you get it in there the correct way. You got a bearing that goes on the back here. There's 2 sealing rings that go on here. They are butt cut again. You're going to definitely want to put grease on this end of it, because you're going to want to pooch out, and you want to grease it up to make it slide easier. They go together like so. This gear is going to go on top. There is a shim that goes in here. You want to make sure that that is in there. Gasket sealer, or I use black silicone. Right up here, sometimes it's in different spots. Usually right here is where the ground attachment goes. They left this one on the vehicle, but it would go there or there normally. Thread locker on these bolts right here, this one, and this one. These are all 12mm, and this goes on the back, on the rest of them. Alright. Okay. Like I said, down in here there's sealing rings again. They are butt cut. You're going to want to make sure these aren't. The early ones are. These are plastic. The early ones are the kind of the Teflon type of stuff. The same thing that these other sealing rings are made out of. These go together like so. You want to make sure that they are in the proper grooves. There is 3 of them. You're going to want to put your low reverse clutches in next. There's a gap on your bottom pressure plate. It's going to sit right there. Then your clutches are going to go on top. I'm going to go ahead and put these in just to show you what to do. You're going to have to make sure that those sealing rings are all the way up in there, because this can be a little difficult, especially on the early ones when they want to try to pooch out, to try to get this to spline together and not push those sealing rings off. Alright, the early one's a little bit different. You got a cushion plate here. You're going to want to put the dish down on the bottom one. Since we got that on that right there, we're going to have to put the other one right here. The dish is going to be up. We got our top pressure plate and our snap ring. Alright, we got our bearing. It's going to go this way, right there. Alright, we have our drum. Make sure our bearing is on the back. You're going to have to spline that down into there. Normally it does not drop that easily. We have our clutch hub with our washer. It's going to go in next. Since we don't have no clutches, it's easier. Since there's no clutches, it's going to make feeling this go down, or making this go down into there, maybe a little bit more difficult than it normally is. So we're going to put this in. We're going to have to feel that spline into that other, and it's going to not be able to feel it so much. Make sure our bearings on there, our bearings on there. Our sun gear. Our planetary, make sure our bearings on there. Okay. Now this is where we would drop our spring cage in here. We're going to want to line this up in such a way that you can see this last. You're going to be putting it in this way. You want to be able to see this last pin on here, so that, through that hole right there, so that you can make sure that it gets lined up. I'm going to make this easy on myself and not put that in there, but you would want to put that in there. Then your piston is going to have to be lined up. We got our feed hole is right there, so we would want this piston somewhere about right there, probably, so that our pin would be lined up through that hole. I'm going to leave my piston out also. Make this super easy on me. This is our lineup. It has to go right here. Our feed hole. Once we get this in, we want to make sure that through that hole right there, this feed hole is lined up. You got to kind of go in at an angle because this gets in the way. Alright. That would sit in there just like so. And we are lined up. We got a snap ring. I want that back a little bit more than what it is. And we have our Sprag assembly. It's got a step side. It's going to face down. This side with these little fingers is going to face up. It's going to sit in there just like that. We're going to turn this clockwise and kind of work our Sprag down inside there. You don't want to get it cocked too much because then it won't want to go. Getting this out can be a little bit fun. You got to get wedged up underneath here and pull that sprag up, because you can't pull your planetary up because that snap ring's holding you down. Getting this out can be a little bit fun.
Great job.
Alright, so got another snap ring that goes here. We got a bearing, sits on here, a race on the back, bearing on the front, our clutch hub, and we got our, make sure our bearing's on the back, bearing is in the front here. This is going to spline down. Then our drum is going to drop down past that. The sunshell is going to hold the reverse drum up. Pump's going to hold that drum back. We have to put our servo in. Oh, I forgot to mention, one of the big things on this unit is that when you take this thing out of the cleaner, there's a shuttle valve that's inside the bore up here. This is the release. The apply is inside. You're going to want to, immediately after you take it out, you do not want this thing to seize up. You want to start shooting air back and forth, and you'll hear this thing click. I don't know if you heard that. Let's see if we can get up in here. Yeah. Let's see if we can hear this. You heard that? You might want to even shoot some PB blast or some arrow crawl. In that hole. You don't want that shuttle deal to seize up inside of there. If it does, your band is not going to work properly. Alright, this only lines up one way. We got our return spring on there. We'd have all of our O-rings on here. Okay, on our band we have, this side's going to sit over here. This side has this strut that goes on it. This is our apply pin, 40 Torx on the back. It's going to face in. Alright, this is our lock nut for that. I leave this loose Leave it just like that. Go ahead and put your pump in. Make sure that your race, your washer, and your gasket is on here. These pump bolts have the number 7 on them. This bracket goes right here. Your lockup O-ring is going to go on here. Differential silicone. I forgot to mention that there's an O-ring that goes right there. I'll make sure that that's in there. Alright, 14 millimeters on the case bolts. Okay. Now, I take my band adjustment and I tighten it down to where it's tight, and then I back it off to where my band will move about like that right there. I think the book calls for 2.5 turns. Okay, it's tight. Yeah, it's kind of hard since the table's in the way. That's about a 1/4 turn. That's about a 1/2. That's about 3/4. That's about where I want it, right there. I don't know if you can see that. The amount of turns is not important. What's important is that the band is just barely moving that much. Alright, on this tube here, there's two different seals. If you have a recess right there, it takes the seal that has the lip on it. If it has no recess, it takes the other seal. Your tube goes in there. You got these two short tins that hold that in place. You're going to want to change your lever seal. You're going to have to pull this pin out, this pin out, and this pin out. Pull your linkage all the way out. There's seals that go on here, 4 of them. Make sure and put grease on here to hold these in place. There's 4 of them. Yeah, tighten it. Okay, good. Okay, if you wanted to air check this, I'm trying to remember here. This one does your low reverse. These two do the forward and overrun, high and reverse, I believe. This is one of these is servo release, and one of these is second apply, one's fourth apply. I'll have all that on the Patreon side. Let's see. Got O-rings that go on your accumulators. The big fat one goes down here, and skinny one goes up here, and the spring goes on top. Valve bodies can go down. Your manual valve has to line up. You want it on this side. I'm not going to be able to show that because I'm going to keep the valve body and go through the valve body later and do all the breakout of the valve body. There are different size bolts. That'll all be on the Patreon side. You got 2 longer ones that go on the filter, and this one here I believe is longer. These are shorter than the rest, and then there's the medium ones that go down here and hold this on. Okay, put the pan on. There's different filters, so make sure and match your filter up. I'll be going through that on the valve body side of it. Make sure that's all the same, because there's a bunch of different filters. I guess we're done for this unit. Alright, we got 7 218 thousandths balls. I got something mixed up here. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. And we got 2 bolts that have washers and nuts on them. The bolt's going to come up through the bottom here. And right here we got our separator plate. It's going to go on. We have a filter That has to sit in the back of our plate here. Let's see, how did this go? I got it upside down, no wonder I'm having trouble. Alright, it's going to be sitting in there just like so. So, we want this filter sitting just like that. And this is going to sit on top. Make sure we're sitting flat. Chip ball here, 218 thousandths. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, get the next part, and then we'll be back. We've got 2 springs. We have 2 springs, 2 311 thousandths balls sit on top. We have our separator plate that sits on top. We have our 2 bolts and our retainers. Alright, we're going to leave this loose. Our 2 10mm nuts on top. This one's going to go on the filter, so we're just going to be leaving it loose. Everything's lined up, so we can go ahead and tighten this down. We have our bolts here. And which one was it? I think right there. Alright. 2 long ones, 2 medium ones, and the rest are shorter. Alright, 2-inch 756, same. 2-inch 436, same. Inch 731, and it's the same. There, we can go ahead and tighten this down. We have O-rings on the solenoids. I hardly ever have to replace these solenoids. They just don't go bad that often. Our EPC solenoid on here. One of the big problems is that this is not soldered on some of them, especially the early ones. They recommend that you uncrimp this, clean that out, recrimp it, and then resolder it. You want to make sure that it is not moving around on there. Another O-ring here. Alright, there's supposed to be another metal stop on the back side here. It went flying. I am not going to try to hunt that thing down since I'm not using it. It does not matter to me. You got this bracket that goes on here. And I took one too many bolts out of here. We got this one is a little bit longer. It goes on the EPC solenoid here. Go on the solenoids over here. I'm sure that's lined up. Our filter, or different pickup tubes of the filters. You want to make sure and match your filter up. We got 2 short ones. One goes here, one goes here. The rest of these are the same length. Sure we're lined up. Okay, that's all there is for this one.